Tariffs, protectionism, minimum wage, exactly the wrong route to go if you want to create good American jobs for American citizens. We know this. If tariffs, massive tariffs being proposed, and protectionism create jobs and wealth and all the rest of it, well then, when? When? I'll give you a little more background on the minimum wage. This is for plunder and deceit. 3% of employees over the age of 25 are on the minimum wage. 3%. Moreover, approximately 10% of part-time workers and full-time workers earn the minimum wage. So why all the big push? Because it's a left-wing agenda item and big labor. They want to drive out low-cost, low-paying jobs, and they want to trigger in many of their contracts the higher salaries, because some of these contracts are tied to an increase in the minimum wage, among other things. There was a great book written called Minimum Wages by University of California economics professor Dr. David Newmark and Federal Reserve policy expert William Washer. I wish I had a book here by the great economics scholar and expert Pat Buchanan, but I don't. They said the higher wage rate causes businesses to substitute capital for labor in the production processes. They call this the substitution effect. You just heard what Wendy's is doing. They're going to blow out tens of thousands of jobs for young people, among others. It's not their fault. If government would leave them alone, state and federal governments with these minimum wage constantly tinkering and interfering based on politics and politics alone, none of this would be happening. As a result, the demand for labor falls. This negative demand for labor applies unambiguously, I'm quoting them, only to less skilled workers whose wages are directly raised by the minimum wage. So all this crap, you rich people need to understand the minimum wage. No, you liberals and protectionists and the rest, you need to understand the minimum wage. The only people who are hurt by the minimum wage, of course, are the people who earn the minimum wage. When it goes up, they go out the door in many, many, many cases. Under the basic competitive model, they write, the cost of the output, whether it's hamburgers or candy at the drugstore, increases. And unskilled and low-skilled jobs are lost when the minimum wage is increased. So those of us who are saying no, we are the compassionate ones. We are, because we understand what the hell's going on. They say, based on the evidence from our nearly 2 decades of research on minimum wages, coupled with the evidence accumulated from an impressive body of research conducted by others, we find it very difficult to see a good economic rationale for continuing to see a higher minimum wage. Numerous economic studies conducted over decades are fairly unambiguous. Minimum wages reduce employment of low-skilled workers. These adverse effects are even more apparent when the research focuses on those. Should I stop and just take out the pom-poms? Mr. Producer, should I just take out the pom-poms? Have we suspended entirely our values and our principles? Should I just take out the pom-poms, or should we keep the pressure on, ladies and gentlemen? Wages for low-skilled jobs are dictated by supply and demand, not the unconstrained wage offers of employers as imposed by government. They said we are hard-pressed to imagine a compelling argument for a higher minimum wage when it neither helps low-income families nor reduces poverty. Also, the Congressional Budget Office underscores these findings. After examining the effects of raising the minimum wage, the CBO concludes the following. For those who keep their jobs, wages would obviously increase. However, jobs for low-wage workers would probably be eliminated. I'm quoting from them. The income of most workers who became jobless would fall substantially, and the share of low-wage workers who were employed would probably fall slightly. Indeed, increasing the minimum wage would reduce total employment by 500,000 workers, unquote. And most of the increased earnings of those who retain their jobs would not go to families below the poverty level because, quote, many low-wage workers are not members of low-income families. So the people who are hurt by this are poorer people, low-skilled, unskilled people. They would lose their jobs, many of them, and 500,000 of them. So how is this compassionate in any respect?